Okay, so we're going to take a look at the automatic color tools within Resolve. Now, these work best when split across multiple nodes. They can be an okay starting point, and then in the next node we can refine it and get it into a good place, and then continue with our grade. So let's just take a look at the auto color tools we have, because they may or may not be any good. If it works, okay? If it gets the job done, that's all that matters when we do this. We're not driven by an honor code in color grading. We just deliver results. So if these tools work, do not shy away from using them, is the point I'm trying to make. I was very aloof about this when I started working. I didn't want to use LUTs. I didn't want to use anything automatic. But now I'm just, well, whatever, let's get the job done and get it to a good standard. It's the same will happen to you as well if you have the same notions about automatic tools. So let's take a look. In the upper left of my primary wheels, and make sure we're back on the primary wheels from the log wheels from the previous lecture, there's a little A in the kind of leftmost side. This is auto balance, and if I click this, it's going to try and grade my shot automatically. Resolve now uses an AI engine to try and do this. It yields mixed results. I often find it can be an okay starting point. So the saturation here is all right. The contrast is too much. So I'm going to bring my lift up a little, and I'm going to bring my highlights down just so, and maybe my mids to about there. And that's a pretty good kind of basic primary grade. I don't like what's happened to his shirt shadow down here. We've got some very hard edges which have appeared as a result of the grade. So let's just see what else we can do there. So because it's an AI driven tool, it can often introduce these little artifacts, and I don't like the shadows, I don't like the highlights there. So let's take a look at the other tools we can use. Next to lift, on the left hand side of lift, I have a little crosshair with a black dot. This is the pick black point option. If I click that, I pick up the crosshair, and what it wants me to do is it wants me to click on an object or click on a region of the image that should be pure black. And his sock down here is a pretty good candidate for that. When I do that, it will set that object, or it will set that selected value down to 0. And it will try to make sure that it is neutral as well. I then have a white crosshair on the left side of gain, and I can click to pick that up, and I will place it over something that should be pure white. And when I do that, it tries to set the highlights there. And then I can play around with my mids. I can try and bring my shadows up a little bit. I can play with my midtones, and then I can bring my saturation up, and that's a passable primary grade. So they can be useful. I very often find they introduce these kind of harsh edges in the shadows, so I don't use them pretty much at all, but if they work for you, they work for you. That's the whole point of this. The last thing we're going to look at is the automatic white balance, and that's just this little kind of white paint drop eyedropper here. I can pick that up, and I click on something that should be pure white, and when I click on that, it basically balances the image so that whatever I clicked on is pure white. If I click on something that isn't white, it gives some pretty weird and wonderful effects. So I can click on maybe this, and then it tries to make that value neutral by balancing the rest of the image. That one can actually be quite useful, but it does require that you have an object that is actually pure white in your frame. If you don't have a highlight that's bright enough, or you don't have a true neutral object in the frame, and very often you don't, is the truth, then it's useless, which is kind of the problem with it. So we do use it sparingly, use it only in the appropriate circumstances. And that's pretty much it for these automatic tools. Like I said, if it works, it works. I personally don't like them. I don't like them at all. One thing that we can do, if I go to my node tree, you'll notice that I have an A here for auto color, but it doesn't actually change any of the primary tools. So using the master reset here isn't going to change it. That's why I like to split these grades across multiple nodes. I like to put whatever auto stuff I have going on in the first node, and then in the second node I can try and make it passable. But nothing's ever going to fix these janky shadows introduced by auto color. That way I can just delete this node. I can just select it and hit backspace to get rid of the auto color if I want, and then I can do my pick black, pick white, or in fact what I might do on this shot, because pick black is making problems, I might just use pick white over there, and then I'll set my shadows by hand. And that avoids a lot of the problems I was getting with those weird janky shadows in the shirt there. So you don't have to use them all. I do find pick white point more useful of the two, because pick black point, like I said, it just makes these kind of janky shadows happen. So play around with these as much as you see fit. I don't use them very often, to be honest, but it's important that we cover them and cover their use. So once you're done with that, go ahead and click on through to the next lecture once you're ready.